afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. I'm calling this meeting to order. This is the Laredo and Webb County MPO meeting, Metropolitan Planning Organization. Today is September the 21st, 2022, and it's 1:31, I believe, 1:31 p.m. We're meeting here at the City of Laredo Council Chambers, 1110 Houston Street, obviously here in Laredo, Texas. You can join us at laredotx.swagit.com/forward-live and also Spectrum TV channel 1300. Again, welcome. And let's see who's here. Chairperson or yes, Mr. Director. Yes, sir.
Yes, Mayor. Good afternoon. Mayor Pete Sines.
Present.
Judge Tano Tijerina.
Present.
Councilmember Ruben Gutierrez.
Present.
Commissioner Jesse Gonzalez. Councilmember Dr. Marte Martinez. Commissioner John Galo.
Present.
Here.
Councilmember Vanessa Perez. Mr. David Salazar. Mr. Humberto Tito Gonzalez.
Present.
Mayor, you do have a quorum.
Okay.
Motion to excuse the ones that are absent.
There's a motion to excuse the people not present. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Commissioner Galo. A discussion. None heard. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None heard. Not seen. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to citizens' comments, we have one gentleman signed up as a speaker, and that's Jose R. Medina. Sir, you have 3 minutes. Mr. Medina. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilman.
For the record, would you state your name?
My name is Jose Medina, and I've been before this board in the past. I'm with Emerald River Redevelopment. I have no idea.
Closer to that red bubble there. Yes, sir. Thank you.
I have no idea if this is an appropriate time, but I know, heard, and I read about the $1.6 billion that the state's granting. And I know that some of it's going to be used for two roads that exit from Mines Roads toward I-35. And if there's any opportunity to ever discuss the Riverbank Road, which is a great necessity for people who live in La Bota, and of course we have land next to it that we want to do residential. The Mines Road does have the biggest employer, or is the local biggest employer in the area, yet the people who live in there don't have the opportunity to live there. So even with the relief of these future roads, you're still going to have a lot of tractor trailers on the Mines Road. And if I have a family with small children, they're still afraid of one tractor. And the Riverbank Road is supposed to be for passenger vehicles only. And I'm just here to remind you that if there's anything that the MPO can do to maybe get, a tiny bit of money out of the 1.6 would be a drop in the bucket. I think the Riverbank Road can be a reality. And that's pretty much what I have to say, unless you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. We don't have an agenda item, but I know maybe the RMA agenda may lend itself when the gentleman, when Mr. Brown steps up, and if he has any questions, maybe we'll call you up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the record, Commissioner Gonzalez, Jesse Gonzalez is not with us. I'm moving on to the next item, and that's the approval of the minutes of the meeting held on August the 17th, 2022.
So moved, there's no amendments.
Okay, there's a motion seconded by Councilmember Gutierrez. Discussion, none heard, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, none heard, not seen, motion carries. B, receive public testimony and approve resolution number MPO 2022-07, adopting the updated 2022 public participation plan. Yes, sir, Mr. Director.
Thank you, Mayor. As you remember, in July, we had a presentation on the updated public participation plan. We opened a comment period at that time. We did not receive any comments. It was a 45-day comment public reviewing period. Now we're bringing this back for final adoption. We just need to receive public testimony at this meeting as well.
Okay, again, it's ongoing. The public hearing is ongoing.
The 45-day period already closed, so we need to open a public hearing at this meeting and then close that public hearing. And so moved.
There's a motion to open this agenda item as a public hearing, and seconded by Judge Tijerina. Discussion. None heard, all in favor say aye. Again, it's a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against? For or against this item? For or against?
Motion to close.
Second.
A motion to close and something else, Mr.
To adopt.
adopt?
Yes, correct.
Motion to close and adopt and seconded by whom?
Myself.
Yeah, by the judge, Antiquaria. Excuse me. Judge Antiquaria seconded, discussion. None heard, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None seen, none heard, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item is receive public testimony and initiate a 10-day public review and comment period for the following proposed amendments to the 2023-2026 TIP, or otherwise referred to as the Transportation Improvement Program, TIP.
So move to initiate a 10-day public hearing, review, and comment period.
Second.
Okay, seconded by John Galo, Commissioner Galo. And keep in mind, there's various items there, 4 to be specific. So that's that motion. Call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None heard, none seen. Motion carries unanimously. So it's a 10-day public review and comment period. Do we have anyone here to comment on this now? Anyone wishing to speak? For or against? For or against? For or against? And we still have an additional, 10-day period. So, anything else on these items, Mr. Mayor?
No, we'll bring it back in October for final, so we can include them in the MTP and the TIP. So just these are the projects we're adding via seal, bringing back the Flecha Lane and Las Cruces Boulevard, which is going to schedule that in 2023, and also the Calton Road Santa Maria interchange for that railroad grade separation. And then we are adding some money for transit. Of course, they've been getting more money with the new infrastructure bill, and they also got that grant for the low emissions. So we're adding that money to this TIP, and we'll bring it back, like I mentioned, for final in October, and then we'll include that.
So again, we still have 10 days for anyone to comment for or against.
Well, I still have a question on item 3. Is there still a need for that grade separation at that location? Because do you not have the truck traffic we used to have there?
Yeah, I know that's been brought up in the past. I think one of the issues was that there's a federal earmark on
I
that.
know, it's a federal earmark and it's been there for what, 10, 15 years?
15 or 20, I think.
So it's been there a
I
long
know they
time.
condemned some properties and.
They are moving forward. I know the city of Laredo is working on that. Every quarter, the city engineering department reports to this committee on that project. They're scheduled to report again in October. So I know they've been moving along with the right-of-way issue, the acquisitions.
Is the city still pushing people down Kelton?
Yes, it's an ongoing project so far.
I know it's an ongoing project, but I'm saying, are you still allowing the truck traffic or wanting the truck traffic on Kelton?
There's still some warehouses that are back there.
We have several areas that currently are active, and so those are the ones we're trying to address. So we have some warehouses in the area, and so it's not necessarily about pushing traffic in that direction, it's about alleviating the current traffic that we have.
I'm saying, no, those traffic's using the other route going on the north end. I'm just wondering if it's
But
still even a
I think
viable
it's a valid
project
argument.
after this
Is
time.
engineering here, or planning and zoning, or somebody that can talk to us about this?
That's a good point, but then again, we've invested already so much money.
We have?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah, I
federal
remember
money.
The issue that was brought up last time was just that about that federal earmark being specific to that project. That it was gonna be difficult to move around, but I'm not sure.
Are you gonna build it just because it's,
Someone from TechStop had
there's
mentioned that
money
last
there,
time.
not because
Also, to
it's
think
needed?
didn't the city have plans also of using that river road, maybe at some point connecting to that other river road that the gentleman spoke about?
So,
And
yes,
this overpass could help along those.
Orlando Navarro, Planning Director for City of Laredo. There was a time when it was you were gonna have a Carlton Road go west, I call it west towards the river, and then curve up and connect, and you would have, the first traffic light on Mines Road where the Pizza Hut is, you know where the Pizza Hut is on, there's road, they were gonna come out at the traffic light, come down to 35.
Fletcher Lane.
Eventually. I know that there's some funds still there, but that project never got.
Just for the record, Ms. Perez is not with us. Thank you. Yes,
Yeah, that's
please go ahead.
Flecha Lane, I think.
Fletcher Lane, thank you for helping with that.
San Roman.
Fletcher Lane, that was the design that I remember that was gonna come around. But that did not happen. A lot of it had to do with rerouting of traffic, because there's less traffic. There is still some 18-wheeler traffic, I'm not saying there isn't, there is, but there was a rerouting, and so it,
But I'm just saying, so once you put that overpass there, then you're gonna get that traffic probably come back, and is that what you want?
not necessary.
Then why are we doing the project if it's really not, at this point, 20 years later, it's really not beneficial, I don't think, to the city?
So-
You're gonna spend it just to spend it? Because it's there?
Yeah, those are all good questions. Yes, Mr.
So
Gonzalez.
I just want to add something, obviously, I think needs to be taken into consideration when you make a decision. That money was allocated, I believe, in 2006. And since it was federally earmarked, you'll have to kick it up to the feds to basically deauthorize the funds. You cannot transfer those
No,
funds
we know that.
anywhere. And you will have to pay back any money that's been spent already to the feds.
That's true.
Okay. Okay, I think that.
That pretty
that's
much
very
closes
telling.
that. And we can move on now.
I think you're right, Judge. Moving on to D, receive public testimony and initiate a 10-day public review and comment period for the following proposed revisions to the 2020-2045 Metropolitan Plan, Transportation Plan, the MTP now.
So move to initiate a 10-day public review and a comment period.
Because motion by Judge Tejerina,
For the
seconded by
MTP.
Ms. Perez. Discussion, none heard, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? None seen, none heard, motion carries. And again, it's got that one item there under that D. It's a short-range projects identified in the MTP and listed in the TIP as necessary to incorporate and reflect the proposed revisions to the 2023-2026 TIP. Again, call for the question. No, I think I did.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
If I-
Right. So it is in a public hearing, in a 10-day public review, comment period. So anyone here wishing to speak for or against? For or against? For or against? And if not, we'll continue for the next 10 days. Moving on to E, discussion with possible action on the allocation and programming of Category 7 funds, including for project CHA 008616-008 Loop 20 interchange at Las Lomas del Sur Boulevard and any other matters incident thereto. Anyone wishing to speak, text out or
And I can initiate, I know that this was an item that was brought back, that was asked for us to bring it to the policy committee when we were having the discussion about Viasillo. We did discuss that there's a funding gap to get Lomas del Sur started. The UTP did allocate some money for that, so there's still a gap of 7 million. And there's, it's 7,030,287. So we wanted to have a discussion here about programming Category 7 funds to cover that financial
We're
gap.
just needing what year were we gonna use? I think it was gonna be 25 after all?
Correct, so staff and the technical committee has recommended to program that in FY '25 to allow some money.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Dr. Marta Martinez and seconded by Jesse Gonzalez, Commissioner Gonzalez. And that would give us full funding?
That's correct, because, so at least for the project estimate that TxDOT has on the UTP, that estimate is 30,240,000. They've programmed Category 2 monies in the amount of 23,209,713. So that gap is the 7,030,287. That would provide the full funding, as is happening with the charter
This is
procedures. or some-
overpass that leads to the sports complex, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, keep in mind, I also can volunteer at least the monies that I have control over, and I think it's close to 500,000, which I've kept for the last 3 or 4 years. And I've spoken to TxDOT, that's available before I leave, if you all see a gap or a need. And I think Councilmember Rodriguez, Vidal, Rodriguez was also, had some money, if there was a gap, he was willing also to put that, for the city and obviously the county. It's extremely important for us to have that overpass because of the major investments we're doing there by the sports complex in that area. And we purchased some land, and we have an above surface water tank that we'll be building in that area as well. For economic development. So
And,
anyway.
and if TxDOT has any money for GAP, also that would be fantastic as well. So I'm just looking that direction, because we really need that. So if you have any extra money
Yeah, in
available
the
as well.
past, they surprise us in a very good way. Sometimes they do come up, it appears some way, and they throw it our way, which is great. Thank you.
Mayor, I believe Tito can give us a timeline of how this project will get off the ground and completion.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so now that there are actual dollars allocated to this project, Mr. Mendez mentioned the 23 million that was allocated this UTP in Cat 2. This 7 million and change will close that gap. We already have a consultant on board already, and it'll be starting work hopefully next month already on the plans for this project. Just want to give you a heads up, we're also going to work on the plans for the other two overpasses that are not currently funded. So as the mayor said, whenever we find extra money, maybe that's an option to get those, but we want to be prepared for the future, right, for those overpasses as well. A timeline, again, if it's in FY '25, the benefit of this project, as Mr. Salazar, our district engineer, mentioned last meeting, we don't need any right-of-way. It's already inside basically the envelope that we cleared. Initially, we have to go through the regular process, but it shouldn't take long since it's already inside the footprint that we cleared some while back when we built that road initially. So yeah, the project will end 25, and then obviously construction time frame for an overpass, we'd probably be looking somewhere in the 20 to 24 months time frame. I do want to recommend, here as part of the committee, Mayor, you know, that money that you're talking about, since this project is not going to let till 2025 and really not completed till 2027, maybe there's an opportunity to look for some operational improvements in that area so that it can serve the traffic that's coming in and out of the sports complex in the meantime before the overpass goes in.
Okay, will you guide me on that then?
We can look at that and we can plan together with your city planning section and together. And I don't know, Mr. Martinez has any comments after?
I do think that operationally, it's gonna be a little difficult to get traffic in and out, but I think we might be able to handle that internally. With your help, of course, that would be in your guidance, but if we can start to look at some of the planning associated with it, I think if we can start some of the design and some of those things with the current money that you may have
Soft
available,
costs,
the
yeah.
soft costs, so that by the time, you know, 2024 happens and it lets, we're already completely done. And I think the RMA might be able to help with some of that as well, because I know they do some of the stuff. So we're gonna have soft costs associated before we have the big lift, and so as a city, we should probably look at that.
Okay, no, that's fine, we'll keep that in mind okay, moving on to E, I believe, discussion with possible action on the allocation and programming.
Yeah.
I don't think I caught this question. Oh, Ed, I'm sorry, yeah.
Well, we have a motion and a second on the table.
Oh, on what, on the, oh, okay.
Allocation of the 2025.
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
funds.
thank you very much, very
Real
important.
quick, Mayor, before I call a question on the vote. Mr. Mendiva, do we have to include here that if 2024 CAT 7 funds are not utilized by Charles Ruthinger, can we utilize it, make it quicker? Because remember, we had that, maybe not, 24 CAT 7 funds were gonna be used for the Charles Ruthinger.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that being
We're
added to
attaching
the
the
motion.
motion in the second,
As amended.
as amended as well.
As amended, and I think it's clear, the distinction that you made. So call for the question, all those in favor say aye.
Question.
Oops, I'm sorry?
Question.
Yes, go ahead.
Does that push us back on the letting of the Church Ruthinger?
No, he's just saying if there's if there's extra
In
funds.
the event there's
Very good.
extra.
I'm just making sure.
No, we gotta get done, Chad Wood
Everything.
needs to get done.
Just
Yeah,
making sure.
thank you. Call for the question, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None heard, none seen, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Next item then is it F? Discussion of possible action on submitting a planning grant application for the U.S. Department of Transportation Reconnecting Communities pilot program in the collaboration with the Downtown Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone, TERS number 1, and Laredo Main Street, and any other matters incident thereto. Mr. Mendive, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. For the record, Juan Mendive, Interim MPO Director. Do you have a brief presentation just to go over this grant? This is an opportunity from the U.S. Department of Transportation, and we were approached by the Downtown Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone, their chairman, Mr. Jose Ceballos, who is here today, and Laredo Main Street. They're looking at an opportunity to apply for this grant to get some dollars for downtown. Right now, as an MPO, we're eligible to apply for a planning grant, not a capital construction grant, but let me go through the details of this. So this RCP grant program, which is the Reconnecting Communities pilot, it's established through the bipartisan infrastructure law, and it's a discretionary grant program. What this funds is, reconnecting communities by removing, retrofitting, or mitigating transportation facilities that create barriers to community connectivity, mobility, access, or economic development. But it must address an eligible facility. So what does that mean? Eligible facilities are defined as any transportation facility that creates a barrier to community connectivity due to high speeds, grade separations, other design factors, including barriers to mobility, access, or economic development. So this includes highways, arterials, rail lines, bridges, and gas pipelines, a lot of what we have in our downtown area. Like I mentioned, MPOs are eligible for planning grants this time. So what are the eligible activities? Public engagement activities, including visioning or other place-based strategies, and also planning studies to assess the feasibility of removing, retrofitting, or mitigating those existing facilities, such as assessing current traffic patterns, the capacity of existing transportation networks to maintain mobility needs, the impact on mobility of freight and people, impact on safety, also environmental, public health, community impacts, just to name a few. Some project examples of what other communities are doing: roadway redesigns and complete street conversions, Main Street revitalization, pedestrian walkways and overpasses, infrastructure removal, high quality public transportation, linear parks and trails, as well as capping and lids. So the merit criteria for this grant, they're going to be looking at equity, environmental justice, community engagement, mobility and community connectivity, community-based stewardship, management, and partnerships. So, that's why we're looking at this partnership with the TERS, the downtown TERS, and Laredo Main Street, equitable development and shared prosperity. Our proposal through this partnership, as I mentioned, between the MPO, downtown TERS, and Main Street, the MPO would serve as the lead applicant. MPO staff is helping to prepare the grant application, and we would work with the City of Laredo Economic Development Department just to submit the application on grants.gov. So that's just something where, since the city is our fiscal agent, we use their DUNS number, so we would need them to just submit that application on our behalf. But we're preparing all the work and doing all the entire application. Project partners will provide assistance in providing relevant background information and data to support the application. So what we're looking at for the funding request is to develop a downtown mobility and connectivity study that would include public engagement, identifying existing barriers, and provide project recommendations that will include cost estimates and assessment of impacts. And hopefully this would help enhance connectivity with surrounding neighborhoods, expand development opportunities. And what we're hoping to do, a primary objective of this is to strategically align with previous downtown studies and stakeholder efforts. There's a lot going on to try to revitalize downtown. And there are several studies that have been done. Also, our Viva Laredo comprehensive plan has policy recommendations to improve downtown. So we would be aligning these efforts with that. The proposed study will help identify key projects that can be submitted for an RCP grant, capital construction grant, in the future round of funding. As I mentioned, the MPO, since we don't own those facilities, we wouldn't be able to apply for a capital construction grant, but the city, the county, someone else might. So this is kind of paving the way for that. The match requirement is 20% of eligible project costs, cash or in kind. So we're proposing that the total project costs for this study not exceed $500,000. So that will allow us to make a federal funding request of $400,000 with a match of $100,000. And we've been talking with the TERS and Main Street about helping secure those commitments for the match. So just right away, some key issues that we're looking at in this study and that we're gonna talk about in our proposal that we'll be submitting is the importance of reconnecting downtown to its surrounding neighborhoods. I-35 in the 4-block area by Bridge Number 2. Now that's been talked about before. So how do we create a redesign there that is safe for pedestrians but still helps, with the vehicular traffic? The need for railroad grade separations, the importance of enhancing walkability and the access to transit, connectivity to our border crossings. Also, as you all know, there's an aging population living in our downtown. We're getting some data on that to provide in the application. There's also new senior home developments that the city has promoted here in the city that they've developed. So we're seeing an increase in the aging population. So we want to make sure that we have streets that provide that type of mobility for them, good mobility. Also, if our downtown revitalizes as is planned, we're hoping for future population increase in downtown. So we need to accommodate for that. Cost of utility relocation, we know that's an issue when redesigning streets. So we need to consider that. And of course, expanding the economic development opportunities. So our request today is just that you allow us to move forward.
So moved.
You have questions?
Question.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, there's a motion. Yeah,
Second.
first of all, motion second by whom? By Commissioner Gonzalez. Discussion, yes.
The match is by whom?
So we're proposing, since we use federal dollars, we can't provide that match. That's why we need to work with our partners. The TERS has discussed maybe at their next meeting, they're gonna have, I think, a special meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
But not from the MPO?
No, it's not coming from the MPO. We're actually helping write the grant and put everything
You're
together.
helping write the grant and you're not gonna be expending,
So
are you going to
able to
be?
provide in kind through staff time, but we need to make it, I need to ask that question to the feds just to make sure that we use MPO staff time since we're funded with federal dollars But this grant does have some flexibility on the matching, so there's a chance that we could use some of our staff time.
And you're not gonna be contracting out or spending monies?
So this study would, not for the grant purposes. If we get the funding, we would use that money to contract out.
No, I'm just
the
saying
study.
for the
this grant,
application
we're
of the
doing it
grant.
in-house. Yes, we're doing the application in-house, we're not contracting
Okay,
out.
very good.
And if need be, I think the city would step up some way to cover that.
It sounds, if I may, it sounds like stuff we've done before, though. I mean, it seems like we're studying the same area again and again and
It was
again.
a
Well, that was
Viva
my
la Luz.
question, because
Yeah,
it's
and
always
so I
Main
mean, like
Street,
how many
Main Street,
times,
Main
we
Street.
know a lot of this
You're not
stuff.
getting
We've
the-
I
looked
think,
at a lot of
yeah, I
this
think
stuff.
we covered it under the Viva Laredo comprehensive plan, but this is more of a master plan.
So this
for
is
the- for the
focusing
downtown.
specifically on mobility, right? So pedestrian enhancements, do we need a pedestrian overpass somewhere, maybe by the 4 blocks? So we would hope to provide those specific project recommendations with some cost estimates and assessments. But an important part of this is opening the way for future monies through that capital construction grant to get some of these projects constructed.
Yeah, and when
And
we were
Mr.
looking
Ceballos, I think could answer some of these questions.
Actually, he just answered it. So Jose Ceballos, for the record, with the Downtown TERS.
And
It's a
you're the
two-step
chair, right?
process. Yes, I chair the TERS. So in order for us to qualify for projects, we've got to go through this planning stage.
Right.
So this opens the door for future funding, for project funding. So once we identified variety of projects, then we can apply subsequent to
So
us being
no
selected.
study that has been done either on the 4 blocks area or downtown.
You're right, there's probably some redundancy, even though this is specialty, the specialty here is mobility. But we wouldn't be eligible to apply for project funding unless we do some planning with the DOT, together with DOT.
And I know we have to go through the bureaucratic steps that are necessary to achieve these funds. It's just that, when we continue to duplicate the same thing over and over again, and we continue to spend money on planning, and we don't actually do anything, it makes it seem as though we're just spinning our wheels. And so that's why I'm asking. I know there is redundancy in the 4 block studies that we've done and the studies of downtown that we've done. So if this is a step that's necessary, so be it. I just, hopefully we get something out of it. And I know it's not coming from the MPO, it's just that the city's
Yeah,
been
Mr.
looking
Navarro's not here, is he?
for projects in downtown and for really, a lot of investment in downtown, especially through the TERS, for quite some time. And so,
Yeah, so this would essentially multiply the TERS. So when we get to the project side, then if we're able to invest 20% out of the TERS and the government invests 80%, then
nope,
that's
I
where
get
we
it.
would win on
Yeah,
the project side.
definitely get that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, so, no, I was just gonna add, so for example, some of those 4 blocks, I'm not sure how far on some of those studies are. A component of this for the capital construction grants is that they be project ready, so they need environmental and stuff like that. So this would kind of help pave the way towards that as well. And I guess provide some cost estimates and actual, which projects do we actually need, would prioritize the projects as
Since we're
well.
talking about the 4 blocks, and there's been a question raised by the community as to the statute. It's coming December, right, Rosario? Yeah, so they're putting the finishing touches on Tomas Sanchez statute, and we should have it by December, January at the latest. Anyway.
We can still refine the scope a bit for the grant, and when we get the money, hopefully we can fine tune the scope also if there's specific things that we need. Also, this money, I mentioned, we can also do this with our MPO planning funds, but by getting a grant for this, we won't have to use our MPO planning dollars for this. And again, as a Metropolitan Planning Organization, that's what we do, right? Planning, that's our part. Wherever we can help projects move along, we want to be there and help. But that's what we're here for, right, to do the planning, I understand the redundancy.
And it appears that this is all geared toward a downtown project, which we have.
Downtown, and specifically, infrastructure that has historically created barriers. So 4 blocks is an example, I-35, right, the railroad.
The railroad especially.
It's a good opportunity to get some money, like I said, we can fine tune the scope to make sure that we're not being redundant.
Okay, anything else? If not, thank you very much, Mr. Mendiva. You need action? Yes.
Yes, just action to allow staff to move forward with this.
We already had a motion in the second.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah. So call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None seen, none heard. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Let's see, discuss, that's G now, a discussion of possible action on exploring the feasibility of a transportation reinvestment
Motion on table.
in North Laredo, Webb County,
This is the one that
including
I-
along FM 1472. There's a motion to table. Is there a second?
Yes, I second.
I seconded. I call for the question. All those in favor? Show of hands. Okay. So,
Well, Ms. Mendiva's gonna bring it back later on. She's asking us to move it. He's gonna bring it back later on.
okay. Well, that's, yeah, well, irrespective, it passed, so
Yeah,
one,
no-
two,
no
three, four.
discussion.
No
There's
discussion.
four, it didn't pass.
Yeah, four, or does it take five or four?
So it has to be a majority of those present, so.
Okay, so how many are we? One, two, four.
But I do
six, seven,
apologize,
eight.
I will vote for, you were asking to bring it back, I'm so sorry, I didn't know.
No, so if you allow me to explain, I know you have a
Well,
table.
hold on, it's four to, no, let's take a vote, I think, there's no discussion. So it's four against four, so really it didn't pass, so I guess we can, yeah, take up the item.
I didn't know,
Mayor,
guys,
we
I'm
can
sorry.
take, can we re-vote?
Just say motion, you want us to bring it back?
Well, it's on the table, do you want a motion against the table?
The motion at the table failed because.
Motion on the table, second time.
So, let me just explain right away. So, the mayor had requested this item be put, sometime back in July. And at that time, we're looking to see if the city and the county wanted to participate in this TRC. But I had mentioned at that time that the taxing entity would be the one that has to make the request to the RMA if they want to partner up on a study to do that TRC study. Because that's not something that we do, right, or that we can use for
Yeah,
federal
because we
dollars.
wanted to model it out of the South Laredo TRZ.
Right.
The south, yeah,
Do it
correct?
in North Laredo by Mines Road. And I know Dr. Martinez had mentioned maybe also exploring the northeast side, correct? So
Are we only talking Mines Road, or are we talking?
the way the item is worded is North Laredo, including FM 1472. So the directive from the policy committee back in July was to bring it back within 3 months. We're bringing back this item, but we know there was some action that was taken at council on Monday to move forward with the
Yeah,
study.
would you clarify that? I think it's important, so at least the county is aware of that. Monday's meeting, there was action, and I think you all delineated the area, 35, 255, and Mines Road, correct? So it's a triangle.
Well, and, yeah, around that area.
Yeah, so that's, so just for the public, that's what council had.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you
It's a TRZ.
I know, but what were the delineations?
Yeah,
Because
35 to Camino Colombia, 255, and then
I think,
Mines Road all the
I
way
think you
back.
miss, if that's the case, you miss the biggest problem we have currently today is people trying to get out of Unitech. And so I know there's been discussions about, there was a TRZ, proposed there at one time, but it didn't include all the way up to the Char-Rusinger Bridge, the overpass. So, I mean, we have the people
So
here
you're saying
all the
maybe-
time.
Maybe another mile beyond 35
Well,
east.
if you're gonna consider something, then you need to, like I said, they cannot get out of that area right now.
Commissioner, I completely agree with you. We're with you on that, and we've brought some things to the table that might have helped with that. That those haven't really helped, and we haven't been able to get to that point. But if you want to include that, we would have to go back to council, because I did want to do a TRZ on the east side of I-35, simply because Unitech has a big problem. We have a lot of warehouses that are coming up, and we're looking at strategically maybe placing some infrastructure in that area as well here in the next few years.
Char-Rusinger's, the overpass is funded, and it's 2025?
Yeah.
And so that thing will be built, and the only thing it's gonna lead to is the frontage road.
Yeah, and you're right.
You're absolutely correct.
So you need something going east, maybe connecting to Mcpherson and some north-south.
I think it's 59 is the one that's going to go all the way north. If you look at the major, or the long-range thoroughfare plan, I
Well,
think.
y'all removed your planning map there, so your thoroughfare map from the wall. But,
What we'll do, with your permission,
Well, let's bring
of
it
course,
back.
we'll bring it back to council, and we'll delineate to go to the.
We'll take that
to go
into
to the
account.
east.
I guess an excellent point.
If we're gonna be on council's agenda, then why is this even considered for us to?
well, they already passed it.
I understand, but there's been some mentioning that we shouldn't pass it because it would have to take it back to the city council. So I'm just saying, we
No,
don't
just
have.
just to get y'all's feedback like we're getting it now, and it was very healthy, very beneficial.
I'll bring it back after they readdress it.
I was just to initiate the discussions about it, and because of that, I think then it went to council. But like I had mentioned before, as an MPO, we're not the one that makes the determination to establish a TRC, so I had just mentioned the taxing entity that's interested in doing that. It's their responsibility, right, to ask the RMA if they want them to proceed with that study.
And just, Mr. Mendoza, just so the county is aware, we did take action, and we wanted to get your feedback on it, which is why we wanted to bring it to you guys. That's why we wanted to communicate with you and let you know. But you bring up a great point, Commissioner Gale. That's the area that we're struggling with the most. And so if we can include that, well, those two areas, Mines Road along with Unitech.
And since we're here, I guess, what is it that you all were thinking about in the Mines Road or between 35 and Mines Road?
For me, if I can, the main thing for me was just to, secure funding make sure that we plan the infrastructure properly, since we're always behind and there's always an issue of funding, that we want to make sure that.
Well, if you're gonna do a TRZ, you should be doing it for shovel-ready type projects. You're not gonna be doing it for future projects that aren't even planned.
We have the River Road, we have ICO, we have,
Well, BioC is funded, right?
Yeah, but I think the model that we'll use for South Laredo, I think, personally speaking, I think the more universal, what we can apply these funds, because you don't know, maybe these feeder roads that connect to, these major thoroughfares.
You gotta remember, because this is my biggest opposition to this TRZs, is it handicaps you. And especially now that SB2 is passed, those tax dollars are already committed. So if you have a cap of $3.5 million or whatever, a 3.5%, those pieces are already taken out before. So now maybe you're only getting 2.5% or 2%, 3%, whatever it may be. So you have to be very careful with these in the future now, because you are limited on the upside.
Yeah, and I think the plan overall is, it's a low impact, and that's why we need to study on the south TRZ to indicate to council, are we better off just 10%, 20%, 30% of whatever improvements are capitalized?
If I may. So, Commissioner, in order to achieve Hacharu-Ruthinger, it took us a long time using Cat 7 funds and.
I understand.
And so if I may, and it took us a long time to figure out how we were going to do it. Same thing with YSCO, we're struggling because we haven't had any income or any monies that were allocated towards that specific purpose. And so what we're hoping to achieve is that, as to your point, as shovel-ready projects are starting to come to fruition, because we're going to need parallels because the growth continues in that area, that we have some source of funding that we can then use for this specific purpose. And if I may, Commissioner, and to your point of right now, we have to be careful. This is why the study is so important. We want to make sure that we're looking at best practices of how to properly use these, because we're in a new territory right now. We've never had this 3.5% rollback. We don't know best practices when it comes to how to utilize TERSs, TRIZs in relation to this ad valorem tax cap that we have now. And so that's why I think we need to go through the process of trying to analyze it and have some experts tell us what we're supposed to do.
No, I agree 100%, because remember we talked about it for the loop, and had we passed it for the loop, you may have been talking $1 million, $2 million less in your budget this year. What would you have done then?
Yeah, but then again,
Because that money is allocated.
No, yeah, but then again, we always have to come up with some cost share. A TechSite always has 5-10% or whatever. So we'll always need money. We'll always need money.
Yeah,
And it took us 8 years to get to this point.
But you pick your projects.
Huh?
You pick your project. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just saying, let's look at it and do it.
No, for us, basically, we're a transportation town. I mean, we'll always need money, whether we are or not. We got these major thoroughfares, and we need to get done with that Loop 20 once and for all also, but we have an agenda item coming up, and maybe that, give us some time to discuss it. So anyway, but I think that, I like that.
I need money for air
discussion.
conditioning.
I'm sorry?
It's a little warm, so I'd like to go through these pretty fast.
I know. Okay, and we apologize for that. Rosario, put that on your
Cost
list.
savings.
Well, let's see.
You see, if we had
H.
the money for the TRIZ, we wouldn't have need to spend it because we didn't have money for the air conditioners. We had to make a choice.
Okay, moving on, thank you for that. Discussion of possible.
We haven't tabled it, so just no action?
There's no action taken.
Oh, okay, no action, okay. And, okay. Yeah, we'll bring it anyway, just, next meeting, hopefully by then we'll have some decisions made at council. So H, a discussion of possible action on El Metro's request to terminate the advanced funding agreements for the ADA bus stops and bicycle plaza projects, and that's CSJ 0922 hyphen 33 hyphen 181 and 0922 hyphen 33 hyphen 202. And any other matters incident there too? Yes, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, my name is Eduardo Bernal, I'm the grant administrator for Metro Transit. Unfortunately, management right now cannot be here today, but El Metro is requesting to cancel both CSHAs due to financial constraints. The project consisted of 26 bus stops and an amount of $300,000 in federal money. However, this was construction money, but did not include engineering and design. When we did RFQ, the engineering designs were extremely high, and we're not unable to negotiate a contract. So at this time, it is in the best of the El Metro and to go ahead and cancel the contracts.
So moved.
And return the money.
Okay, there's a motion second by Commissioner Gayla. Do we stand to lose any funds?
So it was $300,000 that the MPO awarded through the TA call for projects, which we're looking to authorize another one in the next agenda item. We can put those $300,000 back into this next call for projects. It's our proposal, staff.
That works.
Okay, so a call for the question then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, seen, none. None said. The motion carries. Thank you. Next is a motion to authorize a 2022 call for projects for the Laredo-Webb County Area MPO Transportation Alternative Set Aside, which is called TASA, T-A-S-A program, and approve the TASA program application guidelines and funding levels. Mr. Mendive?
Yes, thank you. So I had been before you also about 2 months ago to talk about the call for projects. We did go to the Active Transportation Committee and to the Technical Committee. They approved our guidelines. Those guidelines are in your packet. I can give a quick overview about this, but if you want, I'll just highlight the major things. You remember this TA funds, again, MPOs are able to select projects for transportation alternatives, things such as bike lanes, right, sidewalks, bus shelters, as was just mentioned. So some eligible projects, for example, are the safe routes to schools, planning, designing, constructing boulevards, transportation alternatives, like I mentioned, bike lanes. Again, this TA set aside is not a grant. Funds are provided on a cost reimbursement basis. 20% local match is required, and our program guidelines dictate that should be in cash. The TSA set aside funds are available for obligation for 3 years. The ones that are awarded have 3 years to get the project off the ground. So the funding availability that we had proposed was $2.1 million, the $2,143,500. If we add the $300,000 from El Metro, that money they just returned, that'd be $2,400,500. So we're asking this committee to approve this call for projects with that added funds.
So moved.
Okay, there's a motion, seconded by Dr. and seconded by Gutierrez, Councilmember Gutierrez. Discussion?
We're just still with the bike lanes?
Yeah, so these are monies.
Safe routes to schools, also safe routes to.
These are monies that come to the MPOs, and it's a federal requirement that we, be programming monies towards this. So it's a set aside from the Surface Transportation Block Grant for these type of projects. So we have to do a call for projects to award that. So
they're specific to these. We really can't use them.
and the county can apply, city can apply. So for example, Reno Rio Bravo has applied before to a statewide call for projects to improve sidewalks.
Well, I understand that. I just want to make
bike
sure that
lanes.
we're just not putting a median down Santa Maria Road for no reason, Just that limits truck routes, made of bike lanes.
Something important to note is that.
What he's saying is like San Bernardo.
Or San Bernardo, whatever it was.
So the people, the eligible entities are, for example, the city, the county, school districts. So it depends what projects they submit. We're gonna see that. We're gonna have an evaluation committee and bring back that to you. At the end, this committee selects those projects and decides how much funding to provide.
Okay, so there's still an opportunity to.
Yes, correct. This is just to open the call for projects. I do ask on the motion if you can just mention it, effective starting next week.
I made the motion already for this.
Okay, yes.
Yeah,
Could you just add to, for it to be effective next week? That way it gives staff a little bit of
As
time.
amended, and second as amended, sir.
Second.
And I was gonna mention the Strava heat map again, just so that you know. If you look at the Strava
What?
heat map, it demonstrates, never mind.
Call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? None heard, none seen. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, discuss the possible action on the Achad Ruthinger Road project. That's usually done by text. Tito, do you have any
No updates yet on target to let in August of 2023 this year. So I guess effective at the beginning of this month, we got the cash balance to, I guess, fund the project we're currently at the moment. So we're still on target to let August of 2023.
Wonderful, good news, thank you. And that's to
There's no
let for
possible
construction,
earlier letting,
correct?
right?
For construction?
For construction, correct.
Yeah, so that's the last leg, last phase.
That'll be, that'll actually going out to letting for construction. The plans will be done and construction should start 2 to 3 months after that.
And what is it exactly we're gonna be building?
Roberto, you want to clarify what it is we're building there?
Sure, and like you'll know this, Char Ruthinger, it's, the interim design is a freeway, right? We're leaving enough right-of-way width to fit in a freeway. But right now what's being constructed are the frontage roads.
Both frontage roads?
Lanes, yes. Maybe
On both
concrete
sides?
On both sides, 2 lanes in each direction.
And then it will have the freeway section in between?
In the middle, yeah, we'll leave in the space in the middle to come back in the future to build later.
Okay, all right-of-ways have been acquired?
Yes.
And that's all the way,
The right-of-way is, right now we're finalizing the right-of-way map and the city will acquire the right-of-way.
Okay, and we'll acquire that when, yeah, we're done with the environmental, so I guess we can acquire it now, right?
Yeah, the environmental is about, it should be about complete, yes. And,
Okay, once we
we're gonna start
complete
with the
that
right-of-way.
and comes out okay, then we're poised to, for the transfer of the right-of-way, correct?
Correct. We're working some minor details with the drainage right now with the property owners. How are we gonna handle some of the drainage? And after that, we'll have the right-of-way map.
But you don't see
complete, which is by the
any
end of
major
the-
issues or anything?
No major issue.
but that's all the way to the east side of 35, right?
Correct, all the way to the east side of 35.
And do we have anything from the overpass east? Do we have any
East- to the
environmental
east,
done?
No, this roadway is connecting right now to the west.
Just to
of
the
35.
front, the northbound frontage road?
Well, we'll be the one on the south side, on the southbound frontage road. But we don't have anything.
Well, the overpass is in
The
there.
overpass will connect the both frontage roads, but
Yeah.
then east of the 35, we don't have anything.
No, but it will connect to the northbound frontage road.
Correct.
Yeah, but it's the same landowner, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we still have to do the
And it's all
environmental.
contingent, I'm sure, if you're working on this, he's committed to the other side as well.
Well, yes,
On
the
the east side.
engineer that is working with the property owner, the Ruthinger, they had expressed that the property owners are willing to work with whoever the entity approached them to build that
To
side.
donate as well, to donate, yeah, okay, thank you. Anything else? No? Thank you very much. Moving on,
None? No question?
5A, a status report by the RMA. Mr. Brown? Do you have a report on that River Road?
We do. I brought some
Okay,
heavy
yeah,
hitters.
maybe that jump.
Melissa, Tony, Lexita from HNTV. We had a Jed Brown for the record, mayor, members of the MPO. We had a board meeting this morning, so we covered a lot of the ground, and we had updates on everything that you see in your agenda packet. I would like to comment on something that Commissioner Gallo and Dr. Martinez said. We totally agree that if you're gonna, you need to be looking at Unitech east of 35 if you decide to do a TRZ. I think that area is gonna capture money, and we're not here to advocate for a TRZ. If y'all want to do it, we're here to help. If you don't elect to do it, that's fine too. But one thing that might be beneficial, and we could start at a council meeting, is by the end of really next month, I believe, we should be done with the South Laredo TRZ study, which we had a presentation on earlier today. It was very informative. And I considered it very educational because I'm still learning about TRZs. But that's something that could be done at the council level or here at the MPO if y'all choose. So I wanted to point that out. And, as far as River Road Corridor Study, it does kind of dovetail into that North Laredo TRZ if y'all decide to do that. But I can come back in a minute if there's any updates you need on any specific project, but I'll turn it over to Melissa and Tony on the River Road Corridor Study.
Well, I was gonna ask us on the Vacío, it's all funded, ready to go.
We're in a good place there, yes, sir.
So when does it start?
That would be 2026. We still have to complete engineering and design, but we're targeting 2026. I know it seems like an eternity, but
And
there's some of
again, you
these steps.
can't phase that? I know you said you had part of
Melissa, you
it
can come
done.
up and see if you disagree with me on that, late 2025, but go ahead.
Fiscal year 2026, starting September.
September 25.
2025, yes.
That's forever.
Okay.
Yes, sir. But again, and let me thank all of y'all for what you did at the last MPO meeting. That was enormous. You made the motion, you made the second. I'll never forget that. I appreciate it. And you're the one that made the motion a few years ago to make it the #1 unfunded project. Those are things I don't personally forget. I appreciate what the MPO has done for Vallecillo. So thank y'all very much.
Okay, so now what's gonna be the next project that you all are gonna work on?
Well, we have 8 of them that we're working on right now that's in your packet that we're working on. That was the one that has the biggest dollar amount, but we're real active on stuff, and we're looking at more projects to take on. We're looking to help the city where they've asked us to help with Concord Hills, which complements the Los Presidentes project. We could get involved, as you mentioned earlier, possibly with the Lomas del Sur overpass somehow, some way. We're always looking for
I'd
more.
like you to look at that, north of Unitech, see how we can connect that.
We had a really good presentation by Tito and Roberto this morning at our board meeting, because that's something that I know it's been discussed a bunch in public, but that's not something we as an RMA have actively looked at. That's an area that does need help, just as much as the Mines Road.
Probably taking that all the way to Mcpherson, no?
Mcpherson's something that, are you talking about going north or
Well, Mcpherson going north and tying in, east going east. And then coming out of Majestic and I don't know what other road, and then they're gonna need probably the frontage road or I think they were talking about the east side of the railroad tracks going all the way until.
That's something that was discussed, if you're talking about north of Unitech, the industrial park, and north of Majestic, and then possibly going to the north and tying to where Charter Lithinger would come out. That whole area is prime for somebody to develop at some point for that road to go through. That would be a big relief route if it could be constructed to get around to the Charter Lithinger overpass. And
when we consider the TRIZ, maybe we can expand it and cover that area.
But I think as far as yes, sir. Absolutely. If you look at that, and y'all are going to take it back to council, but
Commissioner Gayla,
I have another, Mayor, I have another, I'm sorry. There's another section in South Laredo that definitely needs help, Mayor, and I know we're gonna have a change in council this November, but Cielito Lindo, there's an area. There's 5 schools that are clustered together, and there's a ejido that takes you all the way to the end of these cluster of schools. That ejido section needs to be expanded, guys. I don't know if is already still here?
No.
Expanded all the way to Cielito Lindo?
No, expansion as far as widening, because, like I said, you have a high school LBJ, you have Veterans Memorial, you have Lamar Beauty Vergara, and then you have the 9th grade campus. And the ejido feeds all those 4 schools. And that's a major traffic jam every morning, every afternoon.
Is there room?
There is room because there's, to the east of it, it's all brush. It's all land, raw land. And it's probably Chendo's. I think he has all that land.
So
anyways,
Cuatro Vientos and then Ejido, correct?
Correct. It's Cuatro Vientos and then it's Ejido. So in
Ejido,
between.
and then Zapata Highway, right?
Yes.
Parallel.
It's parallel. So there's room for widening Ejido, but that might be a project that we can sit down hopefully in the near future. But
Yes, sir.
that desperately needs help, that cluster right there.
You might want to consider them the tiers, these tiers, if used properly, like Commissioner Galo stated, can afford you that shovel-ready planning money. And this is where they all come in, and I won't forget your statements earlier. I remember when the RMA started about 8-9 years ago. We just couldn't find how best to work with you all. And Commissioner Galo, I remember, because I was brand new at this, that he says, you all need to create, get into the shovel-ready planning phase of it. And that's exactly what they're doing now, and I think it's working very nicely for us. Thank you. So anyway.
And Mayor, Commissioner Gaylor, at the last meeting, I brought a project to extend, to start thinking about extending Mcpherson International North, and especially right off of where United High School is. And basically there's a road that connects to I-35, and so I brought that with the goal of eventually going north. Now, it would have to take like a little detour around, I think there's a big railroad facility there, so it'd be like a nice curve that would have to go around. But it is part of what we're trying to do, and in the last council meeting, we also started looking at our 1,500 acres, potentially doing cargo on a cargo airbase out there as well, because there really is limitless opportunity. And my point was, and to your point, is that if we don't properly master plan this area, we're going to get the same sort of headaches. We already see it in Unitech, but we see it a lot on Mines Road also. And if we don't properly master plan this section now, from here to the next 50 years, we're going to get in the same situation. And so Everything that you're saying, I echo, and it's just, hopefully we can have some of these monies available to start doing some of those projects. Because if not, then we will be exactly where we were with Mines Road for the last 10 years.
Absolutely. Thank you, Doctor. Yeah,
Well,
anything else?
If you want to hear something on River Road, that was asked, we
Yeah,
have somebody that can present on that right now.
Councilmember
if you'd
Perez, I
like.
know,
It's really up to you.
is here, and then we have some other people that initially spoke on that River Road.
Thank you, Chairman Brown. So for the record, Melissa Montemayor, HNTB, the GEC for the RMA here in Laredo. On River Road, we had our kickoff meeting for the River Road Corridor Alternative Study in August. So we already have a purpose and need that's drafted. We've already started identifying environmental constraints. We have a methodology, and the methodology is basically a 3-step method that we're going to identify existing information. So as you mentioned, sir, you've done some work early on. We're going to recycle that information, and we're definitely not going to throw it away. We're going to look to see what information has already been attained, and then we'll look at other alignments. So we're going to look at geometric constraints. We're going to look at environmental constraints, and then we'll funnel that. Finally, at the very end, we're going to taper it down to looking at the traffic impacts, mobility, and connectivity. Of course, safety is always number one. We're starting in October with our stakeholder meetings. We'll have stakeholder meetings here in Laredo as early as October 19th and 20th. We'll be meeting with you elected officials, city officials, county officials, and of course the citizens of the area. So looking forward to that. We anticipate the study will be finished by next August, so it's a 12-month, very, very quick study. But we will come up with a preferred alternative. That alternative will then be available for further schematic development and PS&E. So,
Yeah, what held this up was the right-of-ways, and I know Mr. Medina has been working on that. My understanding is that apparently all the landowners, whichever route.
alignment, whichever one, right. There's various landowners along the alignments. Of course, the stakeholder coordination that we're going to be conducting will take into account the input. In my experience in transportation for the last 32 years, the locals know best what the impacts are of the alignments. So we're going to gather that information. What's out there. There's any constraints to either the natural environment or the human environment, and we're going to take all that into account.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Medina, you're okay with that? Okay, thank you. Anything else? And if not, moving on. Thank you very much, RMA. This is a presentation by Wood County Engineering on a proposed strategy to accelerate the construction of the outer loop segments 1, 2, and 3 by leveraging local funds and Category 7 funds. And it's really the extension of Loop 20, correct? I mean, we can call it outer loop, but it's more finishing off the Loop 20 corridor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairperson, committee members. Luis Perez Garcia, Webb County Engineer. We have some schematics that we can show that will delineate exactly what we're talking about. My purpose here is to introduce Mr. Anthony Garza, who is working with Webb County, and he's the one that put this presentation together, and he can answer the questions that you might have. So my purpose was only to introduce him.
Okay, Anthony. Good to see you again, Anthony.
Absolutely. For the record, Anthony Garza on behalf of Webb County. So the concept, and I'll be brief, while we're here is in discussions with the county, there's lots of transportation need in Laredo, and there's lots of people working on different projects. There's a lot of focus on the north with Vallecillos and Achar. I-35 has a ton of money, and that's great, and TxDOT's going on that. Loop 20 has a lot of development going on, and it's fully funded for construction of all the overpasses. This UTP added $281 million to 59 to the west. So that, in looking at what the county could get the best bang for the buck on leveraging local dollars to get money back from the MPO, TxDOT, and various entities, we started looking at the outer loop, which you call it the outer loop, but segments 2 and 3 are basically the Loop 20 extension from Mangana Hines to 83, and segment 1 is to the eventual bridge. So in looking at where things could be done, the north was taken care of, the east was taken care of, a lot of things going on, funded projects. We started focusing on looking at segments 2 and 3 of the outer loop and segment 1. And
we have a graphic there. Could you point to us, and for the public's sake also, which
so here's
is 1,
Loop
2, and 3?
20. Here's segments. here's Loop 20 at Cuatro Vientos.
Could you,
Zoom in.
Right
Yeah,
here. So here's,
right.
here's Loop 20 where it terminates on Mangana Hines.
okay,
So segment 3 is, and these are just temporary, not temporary, they are preliminary alignments done by TxDOT. This is exhibits taken from a TxDOT study. So it extends south, goes to the eventual connection to 359, and then goes west to 83, and then continues west to the border to whatever eventually would be the connection to the new bridge. And the thought process would be is the county is gonna leverage local dollars to environmentally clear these 3 segments, not 4. 4 can stay part of TxDOT's system, and prioritize segments 2 and 3 to basically get the Loop 20 extension 83 shovel ready for TxDOT by the county to kind of leverage the county money into TxDOT funding the remainder of the project. So this is gonna be eventually an expressway facility like Loop 20 was planned to be. So TxDOT has an eventual 6-lane expressway facility with 2-lane frontage roads. With a that, they're gonna do 4-lane expressway facility with 2-lane frontage roads. But to make it affordable and be able to environmentally clear the entire footprint is a similar strategy that was used on a char. You clear the entire 400-foot right-of-way, and you clear the entire project with either building 1 frontage road or 2 frontage roads. And the ask of the MPO is gonna be to fund 1 frontage road in one direction for the entire 7.2 miles of the project, because putting that funding on the project puts the project and gives it what's called develop authority. And that allows TxDOT to review environmental documents, review schematics, and with a segment in the tip, provide environmental clearance. So the commitment by Webb County to develop this project is to use 100% local funds to design the project up to the schematic phase, environmentally clear it, complete the right-of-way map, acquire the right-of-way, and design if needed. So that's 100% county funded, and the commitment needed from the MPO, and that's a total of 7.5 miles, I'm sorry. The segment 3 and 2, and this all takes into account.
the 7.5 miles from the Magana.
Hines all the way to, and this is including to the proposed bridge. The segment to 83 is only 4.8, but you're clearing the whole thing. And then the funding plan would be putting a right-of-way phase in 2026, just procedurally with $1 million, funding segments 2 and 3 with $21.5 million in fiscal year 2029, and funding segment 1 in 2032, the last year of the current UTP, with 13.39. And using this money at the MPO, Hachar would still remain fully funded with contingency left over for construction overruns. The Vallecillos Road would still get its $16.5 million. Allocating this funding to this project.
Las Lomas?
Yes, Lomas del Sur, it would not affect any request that has been come forward.
So you're saying, add for Las Lomas, and then possibly use a category 7 fund for
No,
this?
I'm saying, even with Hachar using with Hachar's money plus contingency for Hachar overruns, the 16.5 for Vallecillos, and the 7 million for Lomas del Sur, there is still enough money left to program this without affecting any other project at the MPO. And the funding being requested is going to be for construction only, basically, except for that $1 million for right-of-way, just as a phase that needs to be in the tip for project development. And basically, this money couldn't be touched until the project is shovel-ready. So the risk to the MPO, unless the county is 100% successful, the risk to the MPO is that nothing happens to this money because it's for construction only. And since it would be a TxDOT on-system project, 100% of the project development would be overseen by TxDOT and have every step reviewed by them. So I'll turn it over to, so next slide is just the pass through the UTP. So right now the project doesn't even have plan authority, it's at a study level. So this would put us in develop authority, which would allow TxDOT to review everything. So the outcomes for the county doing this type of work would mean that 35 million in category 7 funds at the MPO could leverage about $200 to $300 million in future TxDOT funding by placing that 400 feet of right-of-way in place. So we talk about all these challenges here that we're dealing with, and this is kind of getting ahead of the curve and making sure to put this in, because at that point, the asks for funding become very easy because the right-of-way is in place, the environmental is done and all that. So we're just looking to try and get the best deal for the county, bang for the buck. So I'll turn it over to TxDOT for any comments.
I get,
Yeah, let me ask you this, as far as right of way, is it been donated? Do we have any?
So we're at this point, once you get into the schematic and environmental phase, there has to be an alternatives analysis, full study and everything. So that discussion doesn't even happen. And you really can't even discuss donating right away until, you have to do an appraisal and if they want to after the fact. So that could happen in the future and that would be great. But that's something that I couldn't answer with any definitive answer at this point.
But if it isn't, then TechStop would pick it up, if.
Any right of way would have to be purchased in the name of the state by the county.
Right. But who would pay it?
The county.
well, in this case,
Well, the county would
they're
pay for that.
proposing to acquire the right of way on their own, right?
Yeah,
They're-
the county's
And then they'll
acquiring it.
transfer it.
We've set aside the last 5 years, we've already budgeted for the next 5 years to build shovel-ready projects. That way, we could take ownership in a sense where we could just run with it, hand it over to TechStop right at the end when it's ready for construction. Next 5 years.
And the environmental, the policy, they call it
So it would be led by the county and reviewed completely by TxDOT, but that's completely covered by Webb County.
Or if the RMA wants to join in. We'll let them.
If I may,
yes.
You guys have programmed in the next 5 years to be able to start doing these shovel-ready projects. But Commissioner Gaylor, you spoke about the great need at the Unitech area, and I like this project, but have you looked at that area, programming some of these funds to have shovel-ready projects specifically for an area that we already know has a significant amount of traffic? Because, I mean, I know that we
Looked at it, but we don't have any plans like we have here.
but you have money, and that area is currently in dire need. In dire need of exactly what you're doing here in the south.
If I may?
Yes, could you give me 1 second? The reason why I'm saying this because this is something that I think the city and the county could partner in right quickly to solve an issue that we currently have. If you have these kinds of funds and you're wanting to move this quickly, I know we can get the city to help us do this so that we can get that whole problem area solved really, really fast within the next 5 years. Because I know this is something that's towards the future, and I know that there's growth down there, but we currently have, we've had explosion of growth on the west and east side of I-35 in that north section. And so is it something that you guys would consider? Because we'd like to partner with you guys, and if you're doing this down there, I mean, why not do it already and turn it over to TxDOT the same way in the north side of the city?
Well, because I don't think there'll be TxDOT projects.
Exactly, that's what I was gonna say.
I'm sorry, what was that?
They would be. Charter-Ruthinger and that road, the.
Well, that part, yes, but I'm talking about the connectors from.
Yeah, but the outer loop is going to touch right there. And so
If you got something, I want to look at it.
Because when you look at the outer loop, and you're talking about starting from the south, I mean, our active problem is on the north. You could start on the north, exactly what you're doing in the south. You could start on the north section and solve our issues that we're facing right now, both
I
on the
don't think
west side and the
anybody's
east side.
opposed to it. If we have something that's ready to go, let's look at it.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, TechStop?
No, I just wanted to clarify on the funding. I think, Juan, I think you had a table earlier that kind of broke down the allocations that we have each year remaining. So I just wanted to clarify, right now we're in the 2023 UTP, so it's a 10-year program, right? So we have funds from 23 all the way to 2032. Based on the action that we took earlier, we now have committed the funds for 23, 24, like we mentioned, we're holding as a just in case, right, contingency for Charter-Ruthinger. 25 is committed to now to Lomas. 26, 27 is committed to Isil. So that leaves us 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. That total right now totals up to
Cut me a check.
$40.75 million in Cat 7, right, that we have available to program. So I just want to clarify, so from here you're asking to program 35
Correct.
of that 40.75 that's available.
Yeah,
Have we covered that overpass over there by Uniroyal?
All of them.
That's been covered already, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, this is additional monies available.
Yeah, these are monies, 40.75 monies that currently are sitting at the MPO's discretion to program to a project.
Future monies.
Future monies, right? From 28
That haven't
to 32 that haven't been programmed to a project. Yes.
And the details by year, we can work out with staff and get everything lined up.
And I gotta tell you, I feel more comfortable if we started from the north-south, because we currently don't have any problems in the south. Our problems are currently in the north.
Well, I'll disagree with that, and I think I have been pushing for the 359 connector since I've been here. And we finally got some movement. You know, every time there's an accident on 359, you have to send all the way back to
2895.
Yeah, 2895, and then come up and come all back over. It's
But
just
there's no reason why, and to your point, there's no reason why we can't go north from that section. In other words, if you're wanting to connect 359 to 59, you can just go north and kind of around to the north and to connect to I-35, because that's our problem area. We don't have the heavy.
I'm sorry?
So the connection.
There is no connector between 359.
I know, but if you want to start with the
No, from
connector from 359 to 59,
255.
and you're saying go south from there, my point is, you can start 359 to 59.
You
and go
can
north
if you
from
can get
there.
the right of way.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can, I think the right of way it has been offered potentially to be donated. And so if we can get that.
Well, if you got it, let us know.
Mayor, if I may add a few things. So, as I mentioned before, the MPO wants to help, accelerate these projects. And right now they'll address it in their presentation, but some of these segments are outside the MPO boundary. So that's something we're gonna have to look at separately, is extending that MPO boundary to be able to bring those projects, to be able to fund them with CAT 7 dollars. Right now, what we could start funding is that extension from Cuatro Vientos, Manganaheim to 83, which the policy committee has prioritized before. So we can start looking at that. Also, another request that was put into TxDOT about doing this. So right now, as my understanding is, TxDOT's the project sponsor for the outer loop. So as long as there's something in writing between TxDOT and the county that, this is moving forward, I mean, we can start looking at that. And also looking at those boundary extensions for that boundary. I know Anthony was gonna mention it right now, but by the end of this year, the census partnership with FHWA will have the updated urbanized areas. Once that comes out, we'll be extending our boundaries up to that urbanized areas. So there's a chance that it would include these portions.
Yeah. So can I see that graphic again?
Yeah, so there are some procedural steps that need to happen to move this forward, and that's the whole thing. But the reason that I recommended this project to the county is because this is the most amount of money they can get back for their dollar. The highest leverage. Instead of spending $5 million to get 10 million, this is spending what they spend to get 250 million.
Personally speaking, I like the project, but I know it connects to that 4-5 bridge, and I know that 4-5 bridge is really advancing. My understanding is that the Mexican government has actually granted the Mexican permit. That's where they want the bridge. I know on the U.S. side, I think the landowner submitted that permit for the 4-5 to Washington, and apparently the White House is holding that permit plus other permits throughout the entire southwestern border. So it's moving, it's coming, and that leads me to the question too. I know we've had a revolving door with managers, and we haven't really had a chance to sit down to visit with the county and with the landowner. But one suggestion that I've heard at least is that we need to enter into this, an MOU so both the county and the city and the landowner can visualize. We can all know what participation we will all have regarding the infrastructure plus the bridge operation and ownership and that sort of thing. So I would ask also that maybe the landowner in particular, because he's the one that is basically in control at this point, to submit something to the city, to our city manager, so we can start evaluating as a council, some of these terms, have the entire picture before us. And I think it would lend itself toward these, infrastructure projects once we know what participation the city's gonna have.
Well, taking a step back and looking at this from purely a TxDOT NEPA environmental perspective, what this would allow is the environmental clearance to happen on this and the right of way to be put in place. And the way the funding is structured, 2-3 is prioritized. The Loop 20 extension would be prioritized for construction years in advance of 1. So worst case scenario, and this is just saying it out loud, let's say the bridge never happens, you end up with the right of way in place and you end up with 2-3 constructed. But best case scenario is everything happens. So all of these projects have what's called independent utility. They could all work by themselves, given their perfect set
So
of
we
circumstances.
continue working on 2 and 3?
So it's a matter of getting it all shovel ready, and you construct
lot of
whatever,
explosion over there.
whatever ends up getting constructed.
No, and I like the fact that the county is willing to, has committed to, to 2, 3, and 1.
$2.
Yeah, no, that's very good, thank you. So anyway, anything else from our side, your side? TxDOT,
No, I think we're on board. I think you just echo that. The 7 extension, I think, was one of the priorities, right? When we looked at the FPO, so obviously that's an important part. I mean, like always, TxDOT is always excited to see partnering with local, county, city, MPO RMAs. As far as the time constraints are concerned, right, it will save us some time. We do, if the MPO does decide that's where they want to allocate their CAT 7 monies, you were talking about, PSNE. Once we allocate any kind of funds and we get that development authority that you mentioned, we actually can start spending money also on schematic, PSNE, all that stuff, right? Those are kind of the hidden costs that the city, the county, no one sees that, right? We foot the bill for that. I mean, and rightfully so, because it's our own system roadways, right? But those are monies that we have to spend also to develop that we can start spending once there are those dollars that are spent on the road. So that's another option as well. And I'm sure at that point, whoever decides to do that design, the schematic environmental, will partner together with them to get those things done.
And it does serve the potential to free up TxDOT resources to allow TxDOT to use what they have available to continue work on the remainder of the loop and get even more done, even if it starts on the north. So it all works together, and all of the design takes into consideration the remainder of the loop.
That whole stretch, just so everybody knows, is a 44-mile outer loop. The outer loop is 44 miles that's connecting at 255, which what he showed, all the way down to where you have the connection to 83, and then the potential future Bridgeport 5 where it's at. That's a 44-mile stretch.
So that's considered the outer loop also, that section?
That is outer loop. That picture that he showed is that little dual designation where you want to put the map up there.
Yeah.
Where
Inner and outer loop.
yeah, where you see that little Y interchange occur, that is basically like a dual designated area, right? Because at that point, the outer loop and the inner loop, right, they kind of tie into each other.
Yeah, so
Right at that point, yeah.
this will be the connection right here. The map is wrong,
Right.
but.
So really, the outer loop, for all designation purposes, would start at that point, right there. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, moving on, thank you very much. Thank you. That was very good, and thank you, County, for bringing this up and committing, to the expense on the majority of these items. Director's comments?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. It's been a long meeting. So on September 7th, the MPO staff attended a training at Laredo TxDOT District Office to learn more about Decision Lens, the software that helps with managing project data, prioritizing and scoring projects, conducting what-if scenarios, and program budgets to facilitate data-driven decision-making. So we thank TxDOT for coordinating that. Staff is developing RFPs for the 2025-2050 MTP update, the long-range freight mobility plan, and also for general planning services and on-call technical assistance. All these were programmed in our 2023 Unified Planning Work Program. And our upcoming meetings, we have our Active Transportation Committee on September 28th, 2022, Technical Committee October 11th this year, and Policy Committee on October 19th, 2022. We'll see you here again on October 19th. Thank you all. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Any thoughts or comments, questions?
Motion to adjourn?
There's a motion to adjourn, seconded. Discussion, none heard, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None seen, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. This meeting's adjourned at 2:49 p.m. same day. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.